Hi there. Today we're going to talk through the feature article feedback from the practices that you completed on Friday. As we go through this, you may wish to pause the video periodically and write down the feedback that relates to you. So this is based on general feedback from multiple people's feature articles, but not every comment will apply to every person. So as we watch this, you should pause and write down the things that relate to you. By the end of the video, you should have a personalized list of things that you need to remember for your exam. Firstly, I want to start off with some positive things. There were some things I was really happy to see. Firstly, I saw a lot of rhetorical questions being used, people using things like we and you to help with the tone of the article. Some people still need to be a little bit careful about their tone. A lot of people went from being nice and casual to a bit too analytical. So one of the ways to avoid being too analytical is to try and stick to a creative, descriptive and emotional language when you do need to analyze something. Overall though, there was a lot of good attempts with tone. Secondly, make sure that you discuss human condition. A lot of people did that very nicely. There was a lot of beautiful examples used, a lot of creative tone used as well, which was excellent. I saw lots of amazing headlines, lots of really great creative headlines. I think that was one of the best things I saw across most of the articles, so well done on that. And finally, most people were following the structure quite well. So the part of the article that was completed followed the structure that you were given very closely, which is excellent. Moving on to just some simple things that people can fix up fairly easily. Firstly, some feature articles did not include the date that the poem was created. So if that was you, it's a very simple thing to fix up for the real thing. Secondly, make sure that you reread your sentences to ensure that they make sense. Some people need to edit the sentences to correct basic grammar. And if you just silently reread the sentence, you'll work out that it doesn't make sense and it's quite easy to fix. Thirdly, remember that the headline and the abstract need to go across the top of the page, the whole top of the page. Columns should only be used for the main article. Some people had the headline and the abstract in a column as well. You also may wish to put the picture underneath your abstract and headline, otherwise it looks like you are not using the layout properly. Don't forget that your picture box needs a caption. A lot of people just had the box where the picture would go and forgot to put a caption underneath. And you do actually need to put the caption. Don't just write the word caption there. You actually have to have something like a photo of Elizabeth Barrett Browning or whatever we're pretending the photo is. Be careful about the little things. So things such as spelling, especially the names of the poets. That's very basic. People should not be making that mistake. Punctuation such as capital letters, quotation marks around quotes, using a comma before the quote, putting your reference in brackets, using an apostrophe when you're saying Barrett's poem or whoever that has ownership. Make sure that you are referencing the line numbers of the quotes. These are all basic things we've talked about that some people are still getting wrong. If you are confused about how to do any of these things, make sure that you check. Okay, some extra ideas. These are a little bit more to do with the way that the articles have been written. So these are a little bit harder to get right, but I think it's something people need to think about. A lot of people are using the phrase this quote or a long reference to the poem before the quote. So try and replace that with short, simple ideas. So it might be something like Blake's feelings here are clear or Browning's love is almost too overwhelming. Saying the phrase this quote is a bit too analytical, especially if you've repeated it a number of times. There should be no need for anybody to say the next quote. It's far too analytical, far too simple. There are much better ways to link from one quote to the next. If you do decide to discuss a technique such as simile, make sure that you avoid becoming too analytical. A number of people who were saying anaphora or simile or what have you then turned it into very much a repetition of what they'd done in their speech. Try and make sure that that's not what you're doing. The only reason you'd mention something like anaphora is if you are showing how that was connected to the human condition specifically. Think about splitting some of your paragraphs if you've got a long explanation of a quote. There were a few that I read where the paragraph was about a page worth. That's really way too long for a feature article, and normally there's a place in there where you could split it in half. Make sure you keep tying everything you're saying back to the idea that the poem skillfully shows the human condition. You don't necessarily need to repeat the words skillful or human condition over and over again, but the notion that the poem is skillfully showing that idea of love or showing that idea of whatever it is you're talking about needs to be there. Just make sure you don't forget what it is that you're trying to prove. Finally, 2 points to keep in mind for the actual structure of your timing in the exam. Make sure that you go in with a time management plan of some sort. You'll only have about half an hour more than you did for the practice lesson, and most people were less than halfway through. So I think it's very important that you have a specific plan in mind, both for what you're going to write and also how you'd like to use your time. The worst thing that could happen is if you ran out of time to finish this, because that would severely impact your mark. Second thing you should do is try to make sure you leave some time to edit for basic mistakes. So take a bit of time now to consider your own personal editing needs. Are you somebody who needs to go back and check spelling? Are you somebody who needs to just check really basic things? Did I spell Wordsworth's name correctly? That sort of thing. Do you need to go back and check apostrophes? You know how to use them, but you tend to make a mistake with that. Do you need to go back and check something simple like capital letters? Some people were making very, very basic mistakes with that. Do you think you might benefit from going back and thinking about how to add some colourful language? There's multiple different things to edit and different ways to edit. And if you're not sure how to do this, make sure that you check and make sure you consider what you yourself would benefit from editing. Make sure you consider these things very carefully and ask any questions if you have them.